Today from the Global Lane, where in the world? A powerful hurricane, Maria, devastates Puerto Rico, and a massive earthquake collapses buildings and kills hundreds in Mexico. On the home front, Eric Rosales has the latest on North Korea, Trump, and the Russia investigation. And we'll talk to author Tom Jeldon on U.S. immigration. Are we truly a nation of nations? And should they go or should they be sent packing? Mung Fei Lee takes us to the street to hear what people think about the Dreamers. Finally, my commentary, I'll drive it home with a Christian response to DACA and immigration. And it's all here right now from the Global Lane. Today on Where in the World, we take you from the Eastern Caribbean to Mexico. In Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria hit the island as a powerful Category 4 storm. The governor says it may be months before power is restored. And just south of Mexico City, a 7.1 earthquake collapsed buildings, causing death and destruction. Senior international correspondent George Thomas brings us more.
First responders are out on the streets of San Juan, Puerto Rico, after the strongest storm in 83 years slammed into the Caribbean island. Maria destroyed hundreds of homes, snapped trees, tore off roofs, and dumped at least 20 inches of rain. The governor says his island is completely destroyed. Residents of the U.S. territory joined firefighters as they fanned out across the capital, clearing wood and debris from the streets.
This is my apartment. First time I come inside. This is very sad.
As people took stock of the damage, officials are warning it could be months before power is restored on the island, with hotels, ballrooms, shelters, and sports arenas quickly filling up with the homeless. Some are singing about finding strength through the storm. They'll need it as the recovery and cleanup slowly gets underway. The hurricane came ashore off Puerto Rico's northwest coast Wednesday, packing winds of 155 miles per hour, just 2 miles an hour under a Category 5. The storm regained strength as it moved back over open water, on course to slam into Turks and Caicos and the Dominican Republic. Folks in the storm's path made their preparations.
Came here to the gas station, fill up my tanks. After here, I'm going to the food store, stock up on some food, and I'll be good from there.
2,300 miles west of Puerto Rico, this is the scene in Mexico City, as emergency crews are still working tirelessly.
There are still people in there. There are still people groaning.
To find survivors following that 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck the central part of the country. Over 40 buildings collapsed in the capital city. Operation Blessing, which has a significant presence in the country, responded soon after the earthquake struck Tuesday afternoon, deploying folks on motorcycles to distribute water and other essential supplies to some of the hardest hit areas in the city. Within a few hours, hundreds got busy helping set up mobile kitchens and filling warehouses as they stepped up to meet the needs of their hurting neighbors. Local authorities also joined a human chain of Operation Blessing volunteers as they packed vital supplies bound for some of the outlying areas near the quake's epicenter. 245 people have died so far, with Mexico City bearing the brunt of the deaths and damage. More than 2,000 were also injured, and so the need for help is great. George Thomas, CBN News.
Unbelievable. And here's another report on location from CBN producer Esteban Castro. Watch this because it includes video taken inside a collapsing home as the earthquake hit.
Smartphones captured the first moments after the tragedy. People looking for survivors in Jojutla, Morelos, a city close to the epicenter of the earthquake. Many just could not bear it.
How can it be possible that people that I have known for years are not with us anymore? We just could not help them all.
While people waited for authorities to decide if it was safe for them to go to their homes, many thank God for those who risked their lives helping others.
A neighbor from the business next door kicked the door down because my wife and my 2 children couldn't get out.
What used to be a convenience store is now a building about to collapse. They are closing this area for safety. We met a family willing to do anything they can to save at least a little something of their belongings. Nadia took a deep breath when her husband attempted to salvage their belongings.
Tratando de sacar lo más que pueda.
He's trying to get as much as he can. Our room is intact, but my sister's room collapsed. We had to kick the door down to get out.
The building where they used to live might collapse at any time. Nadia realized that inside the house after she captured this video on a smartphone. Now, like many others, she is forced to leave. 87 miles away in Mexico City, authorities and volunteers work tirelessly, digging and proving. They listen attentively for faint voices and signs of life beneath the rubble of this school. Abimelech and his brother were among those rescued from the school. We met him as CBN Humanitarian and Disaster Relief brought food to the hospital for people waiting to hear news about their loved ones. Many people were injured in the earthquake, and some are still missing. Abimelech asked one of our volunteers to pray for his brother, who was still in intensive care. And the greatest need that Mexico might have right now, more than tools, volunteers, and food, is prayer. For CBN News, Esteban Castro, Mexico City.
Boy, that's hard to watch, isn't it? But the good news is, within a day of the earthquake, Operation Blessing's David Darg was in the earthquake zone providing relief. And I talked with him just moments before he departed Mexico City for Puebla. That was the quake epicenter. Then we heard from him again as relief was brought late at night to some of the people in Puebla. Who are these volunteers, Dave? Are they mostly church people? Where do you find them? And they just leave their jobs to do this, or what's going on?
Well, school is out, Gary, because of the devastation. The government has shut down all schools. There's actually a lot of volunteers available. A lot of these people behind me are young people that are just showing up out of the kindness of their heart. But of course, a lot of Operation Blessing's friends, church partners. We have a big church network here that we work with, and they've all come out in force, not only to volunteer with their time, but they're actually bringing supplies. Supplies are just pouring through the door of our office here, Gary. People are bringing food, bringing tents. We have a truck full of tents that's getting ready to leave right after this interview. So there's a lot of activity here.
You've been in a lot of earthquake zones. What's the greatest need at this point, immediately after an earthquake?
Yeah, I've been to many quakes, Gary, as you said, and I think shelter is one of the priorities right now. There are so many families, not necessarily in Mexico City, although there are many displaced, but the ones in Mexico City may have neighbors or friends close by that can take them in. But in Puebla, where we're headed today, we're hearing that there are vast areas where people may not have completely lost the home, although we know there are many homes down. But homes that are too unsafe to go back into, you're going to have a lot of people sleeping out in the elements, and that's why tents are so important. And we have these truckloads of tents we're delivering today. But of course, so many other essentials, food, water, hygiene supplies, and Operation Blessing has all of those things that we're mobilizing to deliver today. And ironically, it was just yesterday, Gary, that we were responding to the last earthquake that hit Mexico. Our OB Mexico team has been flat out. Yesterday, as the quake hit Mexico City, our team in Oaxaca was providing thousands of meals to quake victims there. So we've really been stretched thin, to be honest. There's so much going on, not just in Mexico, but all over the world. It really is a season of disasters. We've come far into the epicenter. This is the Pueblo region, and we've been going from village to village, town to town, and seeing scenes of utter devastation. And it's about 11 o'clock at night. We've come here, we've talked to the local town leader, and they've told us they need a lot of help, and it's evident that they do. Everywhere we look, there are houses down, houses condemned, and there are families sleeping out in the elements. It's just been raining. We found this family with small children that are sleeping out in the rain. They need support, and that's why Operation Blessings here providing tents. We have hundreds of tents in a truck we bought to this community. We're distributing tents all throughout this town and many more like it, places where homes are destroyed and people really need our help.
They don't have any place to sleep. They are sleeping on tents, but they are so grateful because they say that nobody ever remembers them, and that they are so grateful that we are here to help them because now they have a place to sleep. The kids have a place to sleep, so yeah.
On the home front, addressing the United Nations in New York, President Trump said if the United States is forced to defend itself or its allies from rocket man Kim Jong-un's missiles, North Korea will be totally destroyed. And in Washington, more worries for the president as news leaks out that special counsel Robert Mueller may be ready to indict former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort. Here to sort all this out is our national security correspondent, Eric Rosales. Eric, was the president really actually serious about annihilating 25 million people?
Well, you know, Gary, I got to tell you, I think this is more than rhetoric. These are the toughest new sanctions that we've seen so far in President Trump's administration. And I think the biggest thing is getting the Chinese banks on board. As we heard, the Chinese banks that often do trade with North Korea, they will no longer allow that money to be funneled through their bank. As we know, much of that money is coming from illegal arms sales and also drug sales, and that money is funneled through there and is cleaned up. But getting those banks on board, that is a major thing. And also getting the new team together, the support from South Koreans and also from China, Chinese president, and that is really big news for the United States in this diplomatic effort to stop the North Korean regime.
Well, the president has always said China is the key. Now, his words of warning came just days after, I like this, Rocket Man, Un, as the president calls him, launched another missile test, the longest range one yet, into the Pacific. So how concerned, Eric, should we be about that?
Well, you know, I just got back from the Pentagon, and even Pentagon sources there and even officials are telling me that we are in dire days right now. Any sort of miscalculation by the United States or any sort of mess up by us could be the result of World War III. So they are taking this very seriously, but they did say in the same breath that the United States is ready to fight if need be, and that we are ready to take care of the situation, any situation that the president wants.
Well, it seems like we've just been kicking the can down the road for 25, 30 years now, and now we're at the end of the road, aren't we?
We certainly have. I mean, we saw this. This should have been taken care of even during the first Bush administration. Then we had the second Bush administration, the Obama administration. It's just been kicking it down the road, and President Trump is actually taking action now. And these are sanctions that should have been done when North Korea, failed a number of times and shouldn't have gotten this far in their nuclear program.
Before we have you go, I want to ask you one thing about this special counsel's investigation. Robert Mueller, it looks like he's ready to hand down an indictment against Paul Manafort.
Definitely, federal prosecutors are in fact moving forward on this case. And it's even been reported that they told him the day that they went over to his Alexandria apartment that he in fact would be indicted. Whether or not that's his pressure or not for him to give up more information, we have to wait and see. But I tell you what, they are definitely moving forward with the subpoenas. One of the subpoenas is even to his former attorney. And some may say out there, wait a minute, what about attorney-client privilege? But they say that there are some exemptions, at least federal prosecutors say that there are some exemptions to that clause.
And it will be interesting because some of the information and evidence they've obtained may have been from an illegal wiretap of Trump Tower. So we'll look for more from you, Eric, on that in the days ahead. Thanks for your analysis. Continuing now on the home front, immigration is a hot topic issue, and even more so since President Trump said the DACA program initiated by President Obama will end within 6 months unless Congress acts. DACA is a deferred action for childhood arrivals program. Migrants who entered the country illegally with their parents, lived in the U.S. continually since June 15, 2007, and came here before they were 16 years old won't be deported. They're given work permits, and at least 800,000 people, now mostly young adults, are part of DACA. Now, President Trump's final extension forces the hand of Congress. They must act and write new immigration law, or the dreamers will be sent packing. And joining us now is author Tom Gelton. He's written the book, A Nation of Nations. Mr. Gelton, this seems like deja vu again. Since Ronald Reagan, haven't other presidents tried to force the hand of Congress to rewrite immigration laws and failed?
Boy, this has been going on, Gary, for decades. There's always been concern about the number of people who are coming into the country illegally, and concern about how to keep control or get control of our borders. But once those people are here, there's also concern about treating them fairly and respectfully, and trying to balance these two needs of, on the one hand, controlling our borders, on the other hand, taking care of the people who are already here. That's been a real difficult problem to solve. Well, what is the meaning of your book title? You say A Nation of Many Nations? Well, that actually comes, Gary, from a poem by Walt Whitman. It was an essay, a preface to Leaves of Grass, where he wrote that the United States is, in a sense, the greatest poem. He said, here is not merely a nation, but a teeming nation of nations. He was referring to the great variety of human origins. What's the difference between immigration, let's say, during the massive waves that we saw just before and after the turn of the 20th century, and the one we're seeing now? Well, the big difference, Gary, is that up until 1965, the U.S. government tried to control immigration by really favoring certain nationalities over others. There were national origin quotas. So people from Northern and Western Europe, Germany, for example, the Scandinavian countries where my family came from, or Great Britain, they were heavily favored in the allocation of immigrant visas. So the flow of immigration into the United States was very much white and European up until 1965. What happened in that year was Congress passed a new immigration law that did away with those national origin quotas and basically put all countries on more or less equal footing. How should people of faith address this difficult issue? Well, Jesus was pretty clear, and not only Jesus, in the Old Testament, the prophet said to the people of Israel that you were once strangers in your land, and you need to accommodate the strangers when you encounter them in your own land. And of course, Jesus said, welcome the stranger. I mean, the references to how to treat migrants are there throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. So this is one area I have found where people of faith, leaders of faith communities, are actually fairly united, that it is important to treat migrants with respect and to be open to them, to be welcoming to them. There are a lot of issues right now, Gary, in which people of faith differ in terms of the values that they stand for. But I have found that when it comes to immigration and how to treat the migrants and the refugees, there's a lot more unanimity than there is around some of these other really troublesome issues. Well, you had mentioned that the immigrants that we're actually allowing in has changed over the years. So how will this change our nation? It doesn't seem likely that we'll remain a nation with a Christian majority. Well, one thing we can say for sure is that we're not going to remain a nation with a white majority. I mean, I think the latest figures from the Census Bureau suggest that in 25 years, 2042, whites in America will be in the minority, that people of color will be in the majority. Now, I think that Christians will continue to dominate the U.S. population. I mean, if you look right now at immigrants who are coming from African countries and from Asian countries, many of them are Christians. And in fact, it is in what we used to call the third world. It is in places like Africa and South Asia where Christianity is really growing. The sad truth is that in the United States, the number of people who attend church regularly, the number of people who describe themselves as religious is declining. But on the other hand, Christianity is growing in many parts of the world. And so to the extent that we open our doors to these other countries, there is no reason to think that this will necessarily weaken Christianity in this country.
Okay, Tom Gelton, author of the book, A Nation of Nations, and we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Gary. Thank you.
What do Americans think of the DACA program? Should dreamers be sent packing because their parents came to the United States illegally, or should they stay? Meng Fei Lee took to the streets to find out.
Hey, we're from CBN News. Can I ask you?
You're from which news?
CBN News. Can I ask you something very quick? All right, tell me where you're from.
I'm from here.
Great. What's your name?
Michael.
Michael. So the question is, when we talk about the dreamers, do you think the dreamers should be allowed to stay in the United States, or they should be sent back home, and why?
I believe they should be staying for a couple of reasons. A, it wasn't their fault that they got here. B, they're productive. So I guess the real question then comes, is there and how do you have a path to citizenship? Yeah, they're productive.
Tell me your name.
Marina Garvey.
Marina, where are you from?
I'm from Virginia Beach.
Marina, the question is, what do you think of the dreamers? Do you think the dreamers should be allowed to stay in the United States, or they should be definitely sent back to their own countries?
I think they should be allowed to stay. If they've been here the whole time, they shouldn't be forced to go back to a place they've never been to.
Well, thank you very much. That's it. Enjoy your day. Cheryl, where are you from?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. Now, the question is, what do you think of the dreamers? What's your opinion on those dreamers? Should we allow them to stay in the United States, or we should send all of them back to their own countries? And why?
Okay. I think they should stay because they've already been established here. It's not their fault. They were children when they were brought here, and I think it's a good thing. They should stay.
Well, tell me your name.
Jacob Amuel.
Jacob, where are you from?
Originally from Israel.
From Israel? How long have you lived in the United States?
43 years.
Okay. Well, here's a question. Right now, when we talk about the dreamers, the DACA program, do you think those people should be allowed to stay in the United States, or they should be sent back to their own countries, and why?
I think they should be allowed to stay, but they need to apply in the proper way to be able to get the paper, get rid of the criminal out of here. I think the president's doing a good job, and they should support him, because I'm supporting the president also.
That are born here, sure, I think they should stay, and the children that were raised here, they should stay.
And what about the parents? The parents, they came here illegally, and they started a new family, they started their lives here. So, but right now, the debate about the DACA program, do you think all those dreamers should continue to stay here, or should leave the country?
No, I think they should continue to stay, and they should be given the opportunity to legally process their being here. And it's a very sad situation.
All right, Linda, thank you for your answers.
Oh, definitely. I think they definitely should be allowed to stay. I mean, it's not like they were brought here with the intention of being illegal immigrants. I mean, they were kids when they came here. They worked hard. Some of them even fought for our country in the military. It only seems right to give them a chance.
Interesting. What about you, ma'am?
I think the same thing.
Oh, really?
I mean, my mom's from the Philippines. She married my dad in the Navy, and, she has every right to be here. I feel like if you were born here, you should be here. You're an American.
Now, this wasn't a scientific poll, but it did surprise us a bit because we didn't find anyone against allowing dreamers to remain in the USA. Now I'll drive it home on immigration. Once again, immigration is a hot-button issue in America. It never seems to go away because Congress would rather not deal with it. Before President Obama imposed DACA on the people of the United States, he admitted he didn't have the constitutionality or the authority to do it. He said it was just not the case that he could suspend deportations by executive order. Well, crafting immigration laws are the responsibility of the U.S. Congress, not the president. Obama was criticized for moving forward in granting amnesty to the Dreamers, the children of immigrants who broke U.S. law and came to the U.S. Yes, let's say it, they came illegally. Don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning Mr. Obama's executive overreach. But what's a president to do when he sees a need to do something and spineless congressional leaders suffer from political paralysis. Now, President Trump has also told the nation he lacks the constitutional authority to make DACA the law of the land. That's up to Congress. He's given them another 6 months to do something, and if not, DACA's finished. Once again, members of the mainstream media blame President Trump. How could he possibly end deferred action for childhood arrivals? Well, maybe they should reread the U.S. Constitution to refresh their memories about the powers and duties of our three branches of government. Trump also came under fire for his temporary travel ban and for slashing the number of refugees allowed into the U.S. from 85,000 in fiscal 2016 to no more than about 50,000. That quota was reached in July this year, by the way. Trump wants tougher vetting of immigrants to make sure ISIS jihadists and other terrorists do not infiltrate America posing as refugees, as they have done in Europe. The two suspects in London's recent subway bombing are refugees. One is from Iraq, the other from Syria. So why so much criticism over the travel ban and a border wall? Well, listen to what former Muslim popular Turkish evangelist Ishak Abla told me when I asked her about Trump's tough stance on the wall and his travel ban.
Do you lock the door at night? This is exactly what President Trump is doing. He is putting a door. You need to knock on that door and he is to ask, who is this? What is your intention to come to my house? Are you coming in peace or you are not coming in peace? I need to know your intentions. Don't you do that for your house?
Yes, folks, we need to protect our country from those who want to harm us, but let's not be so fearful of refugees that we lock the doors forever. We're truly a nation of nations. Our diversity makes us great. And I've met quite a few people over the years who mentioned that they want to serve as missionaries overseas. But guess what? You don't have to go to a foreign country to be a missionary. The world is coming to America and the West. There's now an unprecedented opportunity for Christians to share their faith right in their neighborhoods. Before he lost his battle with cancer, this is what former Muslim evangelist Nabil Qureshi said about that. Listen up.
You know, we sent one missionary per million Muslims into the rest of the world over the past few decades, and God looked at us and said, well, since you're not going, we're going to bring them here. And so he brought Muslims to Denver, Colorado. There's tons of them. And you are here. Why didn't we go to heaven, right? Why didn't we go to heaven as soon as we became believers? God left us here for the specific purpose of loving others and leading them to Christ and sharing God's love with them and letting them know what it means to be loved by God. That is why we're here.
So while walls and better vetting may make America safer, let's not be so fearful of those who may wish to harm us that we forget about our humanity, generosity, and compassion for the less fortunate. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself and make disciples of all nations. And Hebrews tells us in 13:2, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. America sure could use more angels right about now, and Christians who have the mind of Christ and act in the spirit of the Good Samaritan. Well, that's it from the Global